anomalously warm. I'm not complaining. I do enjoy it when it's over 32 degrees Fahrenheit. It's actually above 40 right now. So all of the snow is melting and it is just mud central outside right now. It's a good time. So, all the alarms are going off right now. Of course they all go off right now because that's a normal state of affairs. But today it's time for Cat Chat with me. My name is Penny, and what I'm going to be talking about is diabetes in cats. And in particular, I'm going to be talking about glucose curves and why you should actually do them yourself at home if you have a diabetic cat. So, like I said, my name is Penny. I am the proprietor, chief cat cuddler, and the principal litter box engineer at Mew Mew House. And in Mew Mew House, we have a few cats, two of whom are diabetic. And we're going to talk about diabetes today, in part because yesterday I had to take some glucose curves because it's just one of those things you do. But before I go into that, I'd like to know where you are. Who are you? How are you doing today? We all having a good time? We're here. It's it's Wednesday. The week has already been a long week. How about that, right? So drop a comment, hashtag live if you're watching live, hashtag replay if you're watching this on replay, because I like to know who's been watching it later. And if you can, let me know where you're watching from. And I don't mean from your living room. I mean from what continent, what town, whatever you feel like doing. Are you watching from work? All right. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about diabetes in cats. All right. So diabetes is a thing, and humans deal with it too. It's just like in people, it can, we've got the type 1 and type 2. A lot of cats get diabetes later in life, and a lot of that is related to diet. And like in humans, it can be regulated and controlled with insulin and also with diet. In fact, with cats, it's pretty cool because for some of them, they actually can slowly, with weight loss, it's not unheard of for cats to stop being diabetic. I've seen that happen in my own experience. So blood sugar. Let's think about blood sugar a little bit. So just like with humans, there are, and I can't remember what the units are for measuring blood sugar, but in humans, the ideal number is around 100. Okay, so 100. And you measure it just like you do in humans. Here's my Alpha Track. This is actually a pet glucometer. I mean, it's not a pet. It's like, this is my favorite glucometer. No, this is for dogs and cats, but I have used human glucometer and human glucose strips. Here's the strips. Um, and come up with the same results. So it works pretty much the same. The glucometer is always really cheap. The strips, they are the thing. They're expensive. All right. And it doesn't seem to matter the pet ones or the human ones. They cost about the same. So if you have a glucometer, you can do it. With cats, the way we usually measure glucose, with a human, we're used to the finger prick or something. With cats, you actually do a prick on the edge of their ear. They have a lovely little blood vessel right there. And if that's something you need to know about or are interested in learning about, please feel free to send me a direct message or an email or something, and we can work together on that. So with diabetic cats, insulin is used when you discover a cat is diabetic. It's used to help drop the blood sugar. And what insulin does is it's basically a key that tells the cells to take up sugar. So when you have diabetes, for whatever reason, your body, like, you have all sorts of sugar in your blood, but your cells aren't taking it in, which means basically it's doing you no good. You're eating, it's getting into your bloodstream, but it's not getting into your cells for metabolic purposes. So you're effectively starving to death, even though you're eating plenty. And insulin is a key. This is not insulin. Insulin helps the body open the gates so that the sugar can get in. And So for a lot of organisms, the reason why when they go diabetic, they take insulin shots, and then that helps the body take in the blood sugar, and it drops the blood sugar value. So we want to be around 100, but in diabetic animals, we're getting above 200. In the case of Gizmo, he was in the 500s. Lou has been in the 500s. And what we're shooting for in an animal is to always keep it around 100, and we really don't want it to drop below 50. That's a little tricky. And if you can keep it below 200, that's good, but you really just want it to stay around 100. So, enter the concept of the glucose curve. So, what a glucose curve is, and we are aware of this. We don't realize we're aware of this, but through the day, our blood sugar levels change. I mean, if you've ever gotten really hungry and started feeling lightheaded and realized you're hypoglycemic, which means you have low blood sugar, then yes, you get low blood sugar. We also have had, the I don't know, the parent's nightmare of the kid having a sugar rush, right? It's because their blood sugar is spiked, and they're just like, ah, okay. So we know that blood glucose varies throughout the day. So we're not going to be able to get it to be perfectly steady all the time, but we want to be able to make sure that the peaks aren't too high and the lows aren't too low. If you're me, I actually deal with hypoglycemia, so sometimes my blood sugar just bottoms out, and I know it. Um, who knows if I've ever been hyperglycemic, but basically diabetes is when your blood sugar is too high. So how do we do this? It's important to do glucose curves so that you can see how the blood sugar varies over the course of a day. Depending on when you eat, it usually rises after you've eaten, and then it'll drop. If you're administering insulin, it's going to drop after you administer the insulin, so you want to make sure it doesn't drop too far. And whenever an animal or a person is first diagnosed, they like to run these curves, which is basically measuring blood sugar and keeping track of when they're eating and when they're taking insulin over the course of 24 hours. You take a measurement about every 2 hours. It's hard to do. It's always imperfect, but it's helpful to do the very, very best you can. Now, you can take your cat to the vet, and the vet will do this for you. The problem is when when a person is stressed out, their blood sugar rises naturally because, let's face it, if you're stressed out and you're in this fight or flight mode, yes, fight or fright, or fright, light, um, your body's going to kick into gear and it's going to want to have more sugar for immediate energy. If you're going to run, you need immediate energy. So whenever you're stressed out, your blood sugar rises naturally. So if you take your cat to the vet, their blood sugar might be high and they might not be diabetic. They're just stressed out. And I've observed this in some of my cats too. So it's a good thing I can take measurements at home. So if you can do blood glucose tests at home, if you can do the curve, that's the ideal thing. So let's look at some examples here. I want to show you, um, well, here, let's look at this. Now, my face is going to get hidden, but you don't need to worry about the details of this graphic, but I want you to notice that the blue line that's going up and down, that's the blood glucose value, okay? That's what it is. And the bright green line is 100. So it's staying just below that. The little dots and things are when I'm giving the shot and when they're eating, and you can see it stays basically pretty level between 50 and 100. That's really nice looking. The pink line is 200. That's as high as you really want to get, and it's safe. This is Gizmo. I took this back in October. This is yesterday. He got a little high. I only did, so in October I did 2 days. I actually did 2 days, but yesterday I only did 1 day. So I got a little high, but it's okay. It's still is right around 100. This is a good looking curve. This is great because we know then by giving him his 2 units of insulin, he's fairly well regulated at staying pretty level. The reason why we need to do this is first to make sure maybe he's dropped a little bit. His values were a little low yesterday, so we might want to make an adjustment. Might not need to. He's also lost a bunch of weight, so we might actually go down in the amount of insulin he gets. But I want to show you Lou. Now, Lewis is not very well regulated. Lewis has some challenges. And this is what his curve looked like in October. And what you see, first of all, the red line there is the same red line as in Gizmo's, and that's the 200 line. So Lou is 1 all over the place and 2 still really, really high. And also, you can see that at one point he got super low. He got so low that it didn't even register on the glucometer. It didn't register here. That was scary. That there are things you can do, and we can talk about that privately if you're interested. What you can do. I did what I was taught to do, and then the result was that it spiked way up high, which was okay. I'd rather have it a little too high than a little too low. But then he came back down to a pretty decent level, hovering around 200, which is still not ideal. But then he was okay, and he's been okay ever since. This was back in October. I just did this yesterday. He still is high. He still is, coming up above the 200 mark, but now he's a little bit closer to the 100. He's got a couple of peaks. And, he and Gizmo both had a peak at about the same time, so maybe it had something to do with the timing of feeding. But he's much better regulated, even though he still is a little high. So I'm going to be going to the vet today for a different reason. I've got cats that need vaccinations, but I will be bringing these to the vet, and she can look at these really quickly and say, oh, well, we need to adjust what their values are, or what their dosages are, because Lou and Gizmo are on 2 very different dosages. Gizmo is only getting 2 units twice a day, and Lou is getting 7 units twice a day. So Lou is he's not very well regulated, but it still is working. Sometimes the insulin that you're giving a cat just isn't working. It still is going all over the place. It isn't bringing it down. We can see that it's actually working. I've had cats that were on human insulin, or they have other kinds of pet insulin, because it's not natural cat insulin that you're giving. You're giving either, oh gosh, I don't know where it comes from. A lot of it's porcine from pigs. So it depends on the brand name, which is going to work better for you. But the 2 things that you always want to do is, you need to do glucose curves to make sure the insulin is working and that you've got the dose right. And you can also, if you can do it, you need to help the cat lose weight if it is overweight. It does help a lot. Gizmo was up above 500, and now he's very nicely regulated at 2 units twice a day. He's actually dropped in his dosage. He was at 3 units when he first moved in. So, and he's lost a bunch of weight. Lou, on the other hand, Lou was underweight when I got him and started regulating his insulin, and now he's just packed on the weight and having a really hard time keeping his blood sugar regulated. But the moral of the story here is that if you do have a diabetic cat, it is possible to help your vet by doing glucose curves at home. Now the strips and the glucometer, this is about $70. You can get a human one for a little bit less money. The strips are, again, the expensive part. And you have to use a fresh one every time. And when you're doing a glucose curve, you're going to use 8 or 10 in a day. And then, you're going to screw up at some point, because cats love doing this thing where you finally get a really great drop of blood on their ear and you're about to get the thing right there, and then they shake, and you're like, seriously, cat? And then the cat goes because you know how cats are. But it still is better. It still is cheaper than taking your cat to the vet and having them spend a day at the vet. Trust me on this one. And it's really not that difficult. I mean, it's a thing, but if you've already been giving injections twice a day for insulin, it's not that much more to grab them to every 2 or 3 hours and do a quick glucose measurement. So that's a thing for you to consider. And on that note, I'm happy to say that Lou and Gizmo are both actually fairly well regulated. We'll see what the vet has to say later in the day. But if you like what you're seeing, if you've enjoyed my presentation here, then please like and share this video. If you're watching from the Facebook group, it's a private group, so you can't share from there, but you can share from my Mimi House page and also the YouTube channel, as well as I think you can share this even from LinkedIn, where I'm also broadcasting live. And with that, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week, rest of your Wednesday. Wednesday's a crazy day, and I will see you next week. Bye bye.